Does your life feel a little like this? If so, it may be difficult for you to try to find time to write. Squeezing an hour into your day can sometimes seem like an impossibility. It's easier to maybe block out 30 minutes or perhaps even 15, and you might have tried to do that, but then when you sat down to write, your brain was going 100 miles an hour with everything else that's going on in your life, and the time flew by, and when it was gone, you didn't have any writing done. That's because your brain wasn't primed to create at that time. Well, what does that mean? How do you prime your brain to create? That's what I hope to help you with today. Hi, I'm Colleen M. Story, and this is Writing and Wellness. Imagine for a minute that when you get those 15 minutes to write, you sit down, you grab your keyboard, and your fingers start flying. The words are coming out of you, one right after the other, you're screaming over the keyboard, and by the time the 15 minutes is done, you've finished 500, 1,000, maybe even 1,500 words. This doesn't have to be a pipe dream. There is a way to prime your brain so that it's ready to create when you sit down to write. All you have to do is use a technique called Hypnagogia. So what is Hypnagogia? It's just a fancy word for that time between when you're asleep and you're awake. You know, when you're first waking up in the morning, as long as you're not jolted awake by a noisy alarm, if you're allowed to wake up naturally, usually what happens is you kind of proceed in stages. You have a dim awareness that, you're kind of awake, and then you get more awake, and then you're fully awake. In that space between being asleep and being awake is the place where we're in a state that they call hypnagogia. The same thing happens before you go to sleep. As you're nodding off, you're drifting off. You kind of go in stages. So you're fully awake, then you kind of start getting drowsy, and then you start entering that place where things are kind of fuzzy. You're kind of half asleep and half awake, and maybe it feels a little bit dreamlike, but not all the way yet. Those places between being awake and being asleep, whether you're waking up or going to sleep at the time, are similar to the dream places. When we dream, the brain waves slow way down, and we go into a different state of consciousness. The difference being when you're actually totally asleep and dreaming, a lot of times you're not going to remember or be aware that you're dreaming. But in that half and half place between being asleep and being awake, you are still consciously aware. So this makes this state a really magical one as far as helping to promote creativity. Oftentimes the reason we struggle to be creative when we're fully awake is because of that critic or editor in the background. Everything we write, that critic is saying, oh, that's not very good, you need to change it or you need to fix it. So we're constantly having to battle that part of our brains when we're trying to be creative. The cool thing about hypnagogia is when you're in that state, the editor is quiet, asleep or gone or something, but it's not around, and so your brain has the freedom to be completely creative. The neat thing is that you don't just have to wait, or this isn't something that just happens by chance or with luck. You can actually prime your brain to experience hypnagogia when you want to. So how can we use this technique to help us be more productive and get more done in that short amount of time that we may have to write in our busy lives? I've got 3 ways for you to do that. The first technique is called Dollys Key to Slumber. It's named after the famous artist Salvador Dali. He used to use this to promote his own creativity. So here's what you do. You get a plate, just a standard plate, probably one you don't care too much about, and put it upside down next to your chair. Then you get a metal object, like a key or a spoon, and you hold that in your hand on the side where the plate is. So you have this spoon in your hand, and your hand is directly over the upside down plate, which is on the floor. You get comfortable in your chair, close your eyes, and allow yourself to relax. As your brain starts drifting off into that state of hypnagogia between being fully awake and actually taking a nap, being fully asleep, your muscles will begin to relax until eventually you will drop the spoon. You, as a writer, want to have a notebook near you so you can get down any ideas that occurred to you in that space and time. If it doesn't work and you don't come up with a flood of ideas in that period, I would suggest that you propose to yourself some sort of question that has to do with your writing right now. Like maybe you are not sure what happens in the next scene, or you just want to prime your brain to be ready to write that next scene. So you simply go through the exercise, but before you start, you say to yourself, okay, I need to know what's going to happen in chapter 3. Or I need to know what Kevin's going to say to Sarah when he sees her in the flower shop. Whatever the situation is, prime your brain, propose the question to yourself, and then go ahead and go through the exercise and see if your brain comes up with an answer. The second technique is to use what writer Julia Cameron called morning pages. If you've read The Artist's Way, which was her most famous book, then you know what I'm talking about. She suggested that all writers keep a notebook by their bed and write 1 or 2 pages, I don't remember how many, but a few pages every morning. It's interesting because she was actually taking advantage of hypnagogia depending on how quickly you wake up. You can make sure that you're in a hypnagogic state at this time by doing it just a little bit differently. Okay, so you present yourself the question again the night before, just like you did with the Dollys Key technique. How is this story going to end? What is so-and-so going to do in the climactic scene? Just think about that for a minute or two right before you go to sleep. Now, you don't want to concentrate on it too hard because we writers know how that goes, right? Then it's keeping you up all night. You don't want to do that. Just pose the question to yourself, then let it go. Imagine it flying out the window to go find its solution. Go ahead and go to sleep. Then try not to wake up with an alarm the next morning. It's best if you don't have to, leap out of bed to go to work. Do it on a morning like a weekend morning when you can wake up naturally and take advantage of that slow, gradual wake up that we need to best experience hypnagogia. Keep a notebook by your bed, and when you wake up, you should have ideas coming to you that would answer the question you posed the night before. Your brain starts creating kind of a dream state or is playing you a movie of how this novel needs to end, if that was the question. And when that happens, what you want to do is grab your notebook and write down the ideas as quick as you can. Don't turn on the light and, wake yourself fully up, because you want to take advantage of that state for as long as it will exist. So write down some notes and then let yourself lay back down and see if you can get any more ideas as you're still in that state. It's really cool when you experience it, and I think it will work well for you. Another thing that you can do that's kind of related to this is to write first thing in the morning. Try not to do anything else before then. Don't check your cell phone for sure, because that'll distract you. Try not to eat breakfast, turn on lights, any of that stuff. Just wake up and write. You might not be quite as deep in the dream state as you would be if you practice the technique the other way we talked about, but you would still be kind of in that hazy place where you're not still fully awake, so that you can take advantage of the fact that your editor, your inner critic, is probably still asleep. And it will allow you to write faster and easier without critiquing what you're doing, which can help you to be more productive. The third technique is one I think you'll really like, because it allows you to take a nap. And who doesn't like naps, right? Simply let yourself take a nap, but set a timer. 10 to 15 minutes is usually the sweet spot, same as what they call a power nap. So you put on your timer, get comfortable, and let yourself totally relax. If you have trouble relaxing in the moment, maybe journal a few things that are bothering you, set that aside, and then allow yourself to fully relax during that time. When the timer goes off, grab your notebook and write down any ideas you've had, or simply get your laptop or whatever you usually write on and write the scene that you're planning to write. It always helps to kind of prime yourself before you rest. Pose a question, think about an issue you're facing in your story, or even just think about the next scene coming up. Allow yourself to rest a little bit and then go into the writing. We are most creative when the brain waves are slower, and that means a relaxed, quiet state. In most cases, if you're coming to your writing and you only have a few minutes to write, the reason that you may not be getting the words out or maybe you're not happy with what you're producing is because you're probably tensed up, or maybe you're stressed out, or maybe you're feeling hurried and rushed. I've only got 15 minutes. I got to get this story done. That's never going to be conducive to creativity. Yet, unfortunately, it's reality for many of us. We have a lot going on. We come to the computer, we want to write, but our brains just aren't in the right place. You can change that by simply allowing yourself a short amount of time to rest and relax, and perhaps even to nap. If that simply doesn't work, then use the overnight technique. Before you go to bed, prime your brain with your question and write first thing in the morning, or at least jot down some notes first thing in the morning. Then you can use those notes the next time you have your 15 minutes to write, so you can dive into it and produce more in that short amount of time that you have. So give these 3 techniques a try. I think you'll find that they'll help you get more writing done in a shorter amount of time, and you'll also have more fun doing it because you'll feel more creative. If you need more help with writing productivity, please do check out my award-winning book, Overwhelm Writer Rescue. There are a lot more tips in there to help you get your writing done faster.